Review. Deals are getting made on Israel and the Palestinians. TJC investigates why Jewish schools aren't admitting some special needs students. The head of the so-called anti-APEC, Jeremy Ben-Ami of J Street, sits down for an interview, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world on this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. A new policy for Israel's blockade of Gaza comes with the blessing of the so-called Quartet of Nations seeking to advance the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Coming on the heels of the controversial flotilla raid that left 9 activists dead and 2 Israeli soldiers injured, the new policy would explicitly list the items disallowed for transport to Gaza, especially those that could be used to construct weapons, and allow the entry of building materials for UN-sponsored construction projects. The policy also directs Israel to consider allowing monitors of Gaza checkpoints from the European Union and/or the Palestinian Authority. The terms were hashed out in negotiations over the past week between former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who is the quartet's envoy to the Middle East, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Commenting on the plan, Blair spoke to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, saying, "It will allow us to keep weapons and weapon materials out of Gaza, but on the other hand, to help the Palestinian population there." Adding, the policy in Gaza should be to isolate the extremists, but to help the people. Blair also highlighted another major issue of concern for Israelis in discussing the Gaza situation, which is the condition of captive Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, who's being held in Gaza without foreign monitoring. Blair told Haaretz that now that the blockade of Gaza has been eased, quote, "we will have to redouble our efforts to release Gilad Shalit." Netanyahu also praised the new policy, saying, "It's important for me to have a policy that I can defend before the world." In addition to the new Gaza policy, an inquiry into the flotilla raid has been approved by Israel's cabinet, with 2 foreign observers named to the commission: Nobel Peace Prize laureate Lord William David Trimble of Northern Ireland and international jurist Ken Watkin, a former Judge Advocate General in the Canadian Armed Forces. The White House issued a statement approving of the commission, asserting the structure and terms of reference of Israel's proposed independent public commission can meet the standard of a prompt, impartial, credible, and transparent investigation. But we will not prejudge the process or its outcome, and will await the conduct and findings of the investigation before drawing further conclusions. On a more domestic matter for Israel, but one that could have significant implications for Israeli society, older yeshiva students may not anymore receive special support payments from the Israeli government, according to a ruling of Israel's Supreme Court. Married yeshiva students in Israel who are unemployed have been entitled to government support to guarantee a minimum income, while students at secular institutions lost that funding in 2000, making the ultra-Orthodox disproportionate recipients of government assistance. But that entitlement has now been declared discriminatory by Israel's Supreme Court, and many yeshiva students may now have to find work or other sources of charity to continue raising their families. And now, turning to another issue of who's receiving a Jewish education, Rebecca Honig-Friedman reports on the state of special needs students who aren't being admitted to Jewish schools.
In many respects, Kaylee Samuels is like any other 2-year-old. She likes dolls and playing peekaboo, and her favorite word is no. But because Kaylee has Down syndrome, her family has been told she won't be admitted to the 2-year-old nursery program at their local Jewish private school. And even though it is Kaylee's favorite word, her parents aren't taking no lying down.
My husband said the day she was born, they might as well brand activist on our forehead, because that's what we're going to be. We'll forever be advocating.
For the last several months, Jody Samuels and her husband Gavin have been campaigning to get Manhattan Day School, the modern Orthodox elementary school on the Upper West Side of Manhattan at which their 2 older children are enrolled, to accept Kaylee into their early childhood program, where she would learn alongside her non-disabled peers in what's known in education circles as inclusion.
All her therapists have said she's a perfect candidate for inclusion. She's very high functioning. Right now on her cognitive tests and that she's scoring above typical kids her age, never mind children with Down syndrome.
But Manhattan Day School told the Samuels Kaylee couldn't enroll there, even though the family offered to assist Kaylee with a special needs instructor just for her, referred to as a shadow, as well as to fund any additional needs Kaylee might present.
And about a month later I got a call from the rabbi saying, "We're sorry, the answer's no." And when I said, "But why is it no?" they didn't want to give me an answer.
In response to TJC's inquiries, Manhattan Day School's principal, Rabbi Mordechai Besser, wrote via email that the situation is, quote, "a private matter involving MDS and a West Side family, and therefore we will not discuss the specifics of that case. That said, MDS takes very seriously its responsibility to serve as a community school." Frustrated with the school's unwillingness to give Kaylee an admissions interview, the Samuelses launched the website Kaylee's World in an attempt to raise awareness about their struggle to secure a day school education for their special needs child. And other families with special needs children are speaking out. To find out about a program that's been working for children with special needs over in New Jersey, tune into the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Rebecca. With the flotilla raid still in the news, new policies toward Gaza, and political support for Israel's policies a matter of significant discussion around the globe, it's a good time to measure the pulse of J Street, the group that describes itself as a pro-peace, pro-Israel organization, and which many in the Jewish community have referred to as the anti-AIPAC. For our Newsmakers interview this week, we welcome J Street President Jeremy Ben-Ami to TJC Studio. Jeremy, welcome to the Jewish Channel's Newsmakers segment.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with what's going on right now. The blockade in Gaza has been adjusted with a new policy out this week that will allow more materials into Gaza with monitoring potentially from independent groups. What is your take on that? I know you were opposed to the Gaza blockade.
Right. We think that it's important to have serious security screening and to have a list of items that are kept out of Gaza. That includes weapons and other material that can be used by Hamas to attack Israel. So I think it's important to have a strict security regime, but it was the larger, the lack of clarity of what was allowed in, what was kept out, that we thought was unhelpful either to security or to Israel's broader international image. So I think this is a step in the right direction and will result in a more effective security regime for Israel.
Yeah, and on that note, it was interesting to see that Netanyahu told Tony Blair that he felt that the blockade as it was constructed was not sustainable.
Right, I mean, and that's been our position, actually, and I think that a lot of the people who've taken heat over the past year for this position may feel a little bit vindicated. That, I think going forward, what's important is to keep the weapons out, but also to keep an eye on what the impact is on Israel's image abroad and the growing efforts to delegitimize the country and to isolate it internationally. And Israel needs to weigh that in all of the things that it does as part of the calculus.
And that touches on a point I wanted to raise with you, that J Street is often referred to as the anti-AIPAC or the lobby against AIPAC. Do you feel that the divide between J Street and AIPAC really is one of right versus left?
No, and one of the things I always say very publicly and proudly is we didn't start J Street to be anti any organization, and I actually have a great deal of respect for AIPAC and for what it's accomplished over 50 years. The strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship, the qualitative military edge, these are all things that wouldn't be there were it not for AIPAC. And they also, for those of us who are real political junkies, it wrote a textbook on how you create a lobby. So I have a lot of respect, and we certainly didn't create J Street to be anti-anybody. But we did feel that J Street and the people that it represents didn't have a voice in the American policy debate and the political debate, a pro-Israel but pro-peace point of view that felt that a two-state solution is the essential need of Israel going forward.
You can see more of this interview in the full broadcast version of the Week in Review. That's all for this week. For more news and analysis from the Jewish Channel during the week, please check out our blog at newsdesk.tjctv.com. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. IO Optimum Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, RCN Channel 268, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, visit tjctv.com.